Welcome to East by West Farms. Here we grow what we eat and eat what we grow. This video is part 2 of the garden tour. Basically, I will give you a tour of the planting area around the single white. I will show that the different microclimate relative to the orientation of the sun and relative to the single white. Because of the microclimate difference, you will see that same species may grow differently at different places. If you plant two different plants, the same species of plants in two different locations, some will grow faster, some will grow slower. So that way it will elongate the time that you can harvest from this plant. The second thing I will talk about is how can you use plants for multiple purposes. For example, some plants can give you flowers as well as food, and someone could give you food and shade. And I will also give you a tip on planting ultimate emergency food. This is a plant that you can plant it once. If you have it, you will never go hungry. I'm at the east side of the house. We get morning sun, and also we have some trees on the east side of the property. So that means this area gets partial morning sun. And because of that, I planted chives, which loves shade. Actually, they don't like too much sun, otherwise the tips get burned. I planted these chives probably one week before the deep freeze we have last year. So they didn't grow in winter. I thought they were dead, but in spring they actually come back. One trick of growing thicker wide, broader chive leaves is to you trim it very more frequently. So in this case, the leaves are too small to eat. So even you don't eat it or harvest it, you just trim it about ½ inch above the ground. In front of me are microgreens. I actually let it grow taller than usually you would use for microgreens. And I believe in this case, most of these are basically kohlrabi. Typically, I don't grow this kind of vegetable around this time. I will show you why in a few minutes. In this case, it seems it grows relatively well. You can still see some holes on the leaves, so that means the bugs are eating them. But overall, they are actually better than the one that grow in other locations. Here is a cherry tomato that I grown from the cutting. Basically, I cut the sucker off the mother plant and planted over here. This is the north side of the house. So usually it gets morning shade and also afternoon shade. Over here, I plant most of the shade-loving plants, like the taro roots over here and the chives. So they will eventually take over and provide some shade. They will thrive in the shade. I also planted some of this emergency food that I typically don't grow around this time. The reason, as you can see, is that they have been chewed up by the cabbage looper. That is kind of like the green bugs. Let's see if I can find one. There you go. And they can eat the leaves in no time. And in winter, they are very temperature sensitive. In winter, it's not a problem, but around this time, they are very active. For comparison, you can see that these are the taro roots, they don't seem to get bothered by the bugs at all. Another plant that does not affect by the cabbage looper is this amaranth. And you can see that even though it gets chewed up a little bit, but probably it's by other insects, and they are still growing very strong. When the weather gets warmer, it will have vigorous growth, and then it doesn't have any much pest problem. I'm at the west side of the single wide. In this case, we got morning shade like now. So around 1 or 2 o'clock or so, it will be under sun. You can see these herbs that are planted by the previous owner, and some of them are still just coming out. Over here is a tomato plant that I grow from the cutting. So that's a cherry tomato. So I probably planted this cutting about maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and so they just get started to grow. That's the squashes. I have different type of squashes. The nice thing is they provide the they have very dense foliage, so they will basically provide very dense ground cover that hopefully will choke out all the nut stages and the weed we have in this planting area. Here is a butter squash plant. Let's see if you can see it. That is the same idea. So I got quite a few fruit over here that hopefully it will basically provide the ground cover as well as give us some fruit. This is a cherry tomato that I bought from the feed store. Over here in Texas, we don't get to grow the big tomatoes. Cherry tomato is the one that grow well in this area. This is the mother plant where I get a few other cherry tomatoes planted around the garden over here. So what I did, basically, I just trimmed all the branches and close to the ground, and then planted them, and I got new cherry tomatoes. I already have some tomatoes that are getting red. I actually had one very red, and I didn't harvest in time, so some animal got it. So this time I'm also going to build a cage around it, so that at least for the lower portion of the tomato, we will protect it. These are kales. They are also brassica family, but look like they are not getting this cabbage looper, thank God. And maybe it's because of these other plants get the bugs confused or something, or maybe it's just the microclimate over here. On this side, some is a pepper plant. That's the serrano hot pepper. This is another plant that you can trim it and then get the cuttings to get new plants. So I just usually buy 1 or 2, and then I get cuttings from them. Here is the plant that is the ultimate emergency food, and that is the sweet potatoes. I grew this actually just from the stem of the sweet potato leaves that I bought from the store. Sweet potatoes are the ultimate emergency food. So even if you have nothing else grow if you have the sweet potato plant, you will not go hungry. The leaves are edible, so you could have just leafy vegetable through the brutal heat of summer, and that's why I say it's the ultimate emergency food. Next to the sweet potato is the soybeans. I actually planted these soybeans throughout the garden. So in some of you maybe don't know that soybeans are basically the green part of soybean is the edamame that you see probably in sushi and in the Asian stores. If you go to the seed store and you buy a package of soybeans that probably costs $2.50, and there are only like 20 seeds in there. What I do is I actually go to the Asian store and buy a pound of organic soybeans. They cost like $1.99. This is another tomato I plant. I bought from the feed store. So these are early. This is the first time I'm growing it. It's called the early girl hybrid. So it seems they get a bigger tomato than the cherry tomato, but probably it's not a huge one. So I have a tomato cage to support it. I also put a cage around it just to prevent the animal from stealing my tomatoes. This strip is it's where it's right underneath the roof of the deck. So it gets quite lots of moist and it's a good growing area. The same thing, I planted some emergency food like what is this? Kohlrabi that get eaten up by bugs, and the radish, they seems doing well. And also I seeded some squash. The radish seems to be doing all right. They got some holes on the leaves. I'm not sure they are from the bugs or from the rainfall, because we got very strong rain here that could shred the leaves a little. Hiding between the radish Haiying beans, they are still small because this is one of the heat-loving plants that will grow well in the brutal Texas summer heat. The idea of planting the Haiying bean over here is actually to so that they can grow up. They are rigorous grower and they have beautiful flowers. I'm not sure. I have two varieties. One has purple flower and one has white flower. So I don't know which one it is. But they will vine up the whole area. I will create a trellis for this Haiying beans to grow up and cover this whole area. Here I'm at the southwest corner of the single wide, right by the staircase. So in here, in the morning, I will get morning sun, and in the afternoon, I get pretty good sun until later afternoon. In front of me here is a bunch of green onions that I grow from the cuttings from the onion I bought from Walmart. And you can see that they started as this 1.5-inch cutting. Now they're huge, and we have been harvesting them through the winter. This is not the ideal location for the green onion because green onions like shade. But on the other hand, it's a great location for me because I can just, in the middle of cooking, if I need green onions, I can run down here, grab, pinch a few, and go back to the kitchen to continue my cooking. Now that I got also seeds from this onion, I'm going to plant some of them in a shaded area. These are the kales I planted. Again, this is the emergency food. Typically, I don't plant kale around this time. Actually, this is the first year I plant kale. They seem to be doing okay. There are some bark damage, but they are not as bad as the lettuce on the other side. Behind me is the arugula. And they also, when they just started, they get eaten by bugs. Now they seem to be doing much better as the weather warms up. Between winter and the summer in Texas is typically very short. The weather gets warm up very quickly. You don't really have a lot of plants that or green leafy vegetable within this time. But arugula is one of them that it can germinate in cool weather temperature and that doesn't go bad as quickly as other brassicas. I'm at the south side of the single white, which is obviously you get the most sunlight per day, and also it's the warmest part of the whole garden area. So I started some hot weather crops already over here. But in front of me is the 空心菜 or anchoy, which I grow from actually the stem of the vegetable I bought from the Asian store. These are really hot temperature, heat-loving plants. So they are not growing very vigorously yet because this year we haven't got very warm. The temperature just start to get warm. So here's another serrano plant, pepper plant that I bought. So I bought two of them, one planted on the west side and one planted in the south side. The south side, the pepper is doing much better because they like higher temperature. And I already got lots of flowers and a few pepper plants, a few peppers already. So over here, you can see that how bad the weeds are, even though I have haze mulched over it. This area was really kind of neglected last summer, so we got lots of weed that keep popping out. The idea of plant this butternut squash is that they will basically take over this area together with the 空心菜. Probably in 1 month, the whole area will be densely with the butternut squash leaves, and then that will choke the sun from the weed, and hopefully will continue weaken them, and eventually can make them disappear. And also, of course, we got quite a few butternut squash already. I don't know how long they're going to. How long it takes for it to mature. For this pumpkin and maybe butternut squash, actually you can eat also the tender tips. They're actually pretty tasty as well. That's a quick tour of the garden area around the single white. So in this video, we talk about how you choose the different locations relative to the sun that could give you different growth patterns for the same species. And also, you can select plants that serve different purpose. For example, you can use squash as a ground cover to choke out the weed, and also you can eat the tender tips, and also, of course, you get the squash. For Haiying beans, you have beautiful flowers. You can eat the pea pods, and also it can provide shade. I also talk about the ultimate emergency food, that is the sweet potato plants, that you can eat the leaves and also eat the root, the tuber. I hope you enjoyed this content. If you did, please give me a thumb up. If you have any questions or comments, please leave it down below. If you have not done so, please hit the subscribe button to follow our journey with the East by West farm. Okay.